and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media, and let me tell you, they are. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the depths of the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. I trust everybody had a long weekend. I know that I did. Kind of had to take a little bit off yesterday, too. I was pretty worn out. Not today, though. Not today, my friends. There's plenty to talk about. Now, one of the things that I haven't mentioned on the program, maybe I did in passing, is that my pal Doug Gerard has issued another edition of Evidence-Based Wyoming. Now, what that is it's a website, and it tracks how often people vote with the Republicans and how often they vote with the Democrats. And that's all that it does. And the results of that are striking. I mean, it is absolutely amazing. That coupled with the article that the Open Range Record published yesterday about what exactly a Wyoming conservative is. I'm going to cover this on the program too. But it tells you a lot about these people that are going to show up on your doorstep and ask for your vote. And if you're wondering why a lot of the votes that have been taken during this budget session don't exactly line up with what your representative and your senator have told you, well, it's because they kind of lied to you. And Evidence-Based Wyoming is, it is very revealing. Probably one of the biggest ones is that, you have the conservatives, which are, they're largely, a lot of them are members of the Freedom Caucus, but there are others they're just super conservative that haven't joined the Freedom Caucus. And then again, I'm talking about all Republicans, okay? You get past them, and then the scores really fall off a cliff. I mean, it is a huge difference between the people that are conservatives, how often they vote with the Republicans, and how often the rest of them actually side with the Democrats, which is striking because if you think about this legislative session, the Democrats have, I think that they're calling a lot of the shots. Certainly with this whole stupid check thing. Yeah, I mean, it's been Mike Yin and Carly Provenza and the rest of them just kind of pulling everybody along with them. And when you look at the scores, how these people have been voting, it's very evident. So we're going to go over that today. Also, I've got what I think is a huge story, and we're going to begin here. But the Senate has way overspent, huge amounts. And you're not going to believe the document that I have in my hands. It's absolutely amazing. And I guess I should begin right here, that all of the bills and the budget bill, which, I mean, the budget bill is all spending, at least it's supposed to be, the numbers add up pretty quickly, and it's really hard to keep track of them. I don't know that there's anybody except for Don Richards in the Legislative Service Office that can keep track of all of these things. So, and what I'm saying is they pass House Bill 1 or Senate File 1. Those are the spending bills. And then there's a whole bunch of other bills that might have appropriations on them as well. There might be a lot of bills have spending components to them. I mean, for example, maybe you're setting up a new scholarship. Well, you have to have money to put into the scholarship fund, or maybe it's a highway thing, or maybe it's raises for state officers. I mean, there's any number of things that have spending on them. In fact, I would say that the majority of bills that come out of any legislature have a spending component to them. And so it's really, really hard to keep track of how much money you've spent. And so they have one little piece of, actually it's 2 or 3 pieces of paper that keep track of them. It's called the golden rod. They print it on in a gold piece of paper, and it's given to all of the legislators in the morning. And it's the legislative equivalent of your mobile banking app. The app that you can pull up and you can see at this 10 seconds what all of your bank accounts look like. The problem with that is, and I'm sure you well know this, that with your own banking app, it doesn't tell you what checks are out there. So if you've paid a couple bills, or maybe you bought something and you've written a check for it, well, your instant mobile banking app isn't going to reflect those. In fact, it's not going to show you the checks that have come through until they've come through your bank. And so if you continue to spend with reckless abandon, which we all know that if they're a politician, there's a high likelihood that they're doing that. But if they're spending with reckless abandon, if you do this in your own bank accounts, there's not going to be enough money left over to cover the checks that you have written. And so what the Senate has done is the legislative equivalent of that. In fact, and here's the big headline, the Senate has tried to spend the same pot of money at least twice. In one case, 3 times. And so what happened is they're spending along, they're passing all of these bills, and nobody is really checking to see if there's money in the account. They just pass the bill and keep going. Well, on yesterday's goldenrod, there is a very, very stark note from the staff, and I'm going to show it to you right now. Let's see here. I'm going to go here, and this is why I need Agent 29. I'm just telling you. Because he could throw this up on the screen, piece of cake. And let's see, and we're going to have to do it. Okay, let's do it this way. So we're going to go here, and we'll do the, let's see here, entire screen. Here we go. We'll just do it this way. It's going to look a little weird for a minute, but just hold tight. Okay, so here we go. This is a screenshot from the goldenrod for February 23rd, 2026. This is yesterday. So you can see the numbers there at the top, total balance available. One column, it says $876 million. Another one, 876, 809, 753. So each one of those columns tells you how much money is in each account. And I've got another story that's not quite as big as this one that I'm going to tell you about when we finish this. But let me read to you the staff note. And I want you to pay particular attention to it. It says, quote, multiple bills appropriate, transfer, or redirect the same revenues as of February 23rd, 2026. So what that means is multiple bills have tried to grab the same pot of money. The full impact of these transactions is not always readily identifiable in the pages of this edition of the fiscal profile, the goldenrod. Primarily due to the use of loans, contingencies, or structure of movement of funds specifically. And now there's a couple of them here. So HB 1 and Senate File 123 both contemplate the use of at least half of 1% of the severance tax in fiscal year 27. And so what happened there is the House bill hadn't yet gone over to the Senate. And so they had passed a piece of legislation, Senate File 123, that tried to grab that same amount of money. The next one says House Bill 1, Senate File 1, and Senate File 119 all contemplate the use of the current second 2.5% investment earnings stream generated by the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. And now this is where the Senate starts to get into trouble because their version of the budget, which is Senate File 1 and Senate File 119, both try to grab the same pile of money. And here's another one, Senate File 1 and Senate File 81. They grab the same same chunk of cash from the school foundation program reserve account. And then the fourth one, Senate File 104, appropriates $51.2 million in general funds passed by the Senate Committee of the Whole after the Senate action on Senate File 1. So in multiple cases, the Senate has overspent their wallet. That's what this is telling you. Now, this last comment, I find this one to be the most disturbing out of all of this. Quote, more directly, the negative balance in the general fund after consideration of the statutory reserve amount relates to action after completion and consideration of Senate File 1. So in other words, the Senate spent way more money that is in the general fund. In other words, they're spending way worse than drunken sailors, my friends. And how this happens is you have liberals that just continue to spend and spend and spend and spend and spend. Now, remember, at the start of this session, we were told by a whole bunch of the redcoats, we've got $100 million. I don't know. I'm just making up numbers. We're not broke. Really? Well, if we are so not broke, how is it then Senator Dennis Beitman, his real name is not Bo, it's Dennis. But how is it, Dennis, that you were able to overspend the amount of money in the general fund? How is it that you passed pieces of legislation that tried to grab the same amount of money? What this tells you is the folks that are in charge of the Senate, specifically on the appropriations side, are absolutely incompetent because they were not keeping up with the amount of money that is being spent. Now, this raises a larger question. If indeed Wyoming, the state of Wyoming, is in such fantastic financial condition, how is it that these redcoats were able to spend such huge amounts of money and not keep track of it? Well, the reason they weren't keeping track of it is because they believed that the pile of money was endless. And obviously it isn't. I just showed you that. This is absolutely shocking, my friends, because we've told all along, remember this phrase? Oh, they know what they're doing. They have a plan. Yeah, they have a plan to spend every dollar that's not nailed down. That's the plan from the members of the Senate. Now, the truth is, when the budget bills go to conference, a lot of this is going to get ironed out because Wyoming can't deficit spend. All right, we don't have the ability to print our own money and all of that stuff that they do in Congress. But at this 10 seconds, there is a major indication that the folks in the Senate are absolutely incompetent. Now, that's not to say that the House of Representatives hasn't spent a lot of money too. In fact, they have. Sources told me yesterday is that there's only about $100 million difference between the House's version of the budget and the Senate's version of the budget. And so really, out of all that work that was done in the weeks leading up to the session by the Joint Appropriations Committee, all of that work, all of the cuts that they were made were given back. And so, a lot of that happens on the floor because, you never know what amendment is going to pass and which one isn't. And there's a lot of horse trading that goes on. And so when they go to conference committee, they're only really going to have to dicker over $100 million. And they have to fix this little problem that Dennis and his pals created over in the Senate. The truth is, my friends, this shows you. This is a perfect example of how many of the members of the Senate's Appropriations Committee, frankly, do not know what they're doing. And if they did, they wouldn't have this note on the goldenrod for all to see. Now, keep in mind, to be entirely fair out of all this, all of this is going to get fixed in the end. The only reason I bring this up is to show you how much of your money they've tried to spend. Now keep in mind, you can't do this, right? If you tried to do this, if you got the balance from the bank that the entire legislature was given yesterday, you'd be getting a call from your banker. You wrote a check for a whole bunch of money that's way more than you have in your account. We need you to come down here and fix this. That's what would happen. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. But see, the thing is, finances in the real world often don't match how finances work in the legislature. And so, this is just a perfect example of where you were told, trust the Senate. They've got a plan. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. Well, trust the plan. Trust the plan. I'm so sick of it because they obviously do not have a plan. And they're going to try to blame this little goof somehow. They always do. They're going to try to blame it on the House. But here's evidence, and I'll put this on the website when I'm done with today's program. But it's absolutely shocking, my friends. And here's the thing. This is not rocket science. I mean, we're dealing with big numbers, but it's all economies of scale, right? It doesn't matter if you have $100 in your bank account or $1 million in the bank account. The same principles still apply. You can't spend more money than you have. And Dennis, you can't spend the same amount of money twice. The world does not work that way. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about evidence-based Wyoming and their scores. You're going to love them. They're exactly what I predicted. Dennis and his pals, not so conservative as it turns out. We'll be back. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
Well, I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue. Well, I mean, it's expanding faster than anybody could possibly keep up with. Cowboy State Politics Live, the Cowboy State Politics Podcast, the Open Range Record. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's happening on the program. And frankly, my friends, thank you for engaging with all of it. You know, I wouldn't do what I do without you. Look at there, I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. Anyway, my friends, welcome back to the program. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time, no matter what Representative Mike Yin posts on Facebook. That's another story that I'm going to have to bring you tomorrow, but I think it's wonderfully funny. He doesn't like the article I wrote about him. I wonder why. because it asks some, difficult questions for him, like, maybe you're not doing this for the right reasons, and you didn't do it right, you didn't follow the procedure, and you're on the rules committee and you didn't follow the rules. But anyway, I'll tell you about that tomorrow. So my pal Doug Gerard, who he's the proprietor of Evidence-Based Wyoming, years ago, he set out on a project to chart, and the whole thing was to answer this question, how do we show people the difference between actual Republicans and those people who just hang an R at the end of their name, who register as Republicans only so that they can get elected? And you all know people like this. If you follow politics, that really they ought to be in the Democrat Party. They're all in favor of killing babies and gender transitioning. They're like Elisa Campbell or Julie Jarvis or any of the ones down on the floor. But they just register as Republicans, and they try to claim that they're Wyoming conservatives. No, we are the real conservatives. At first, it's absolutely outrageous. But there's a piece on the Open Range Record, and this is where I want to begin before I get to the actual numbers from Evidence-Based Wyoming, because I want to give you the story here, give you the context of it. So on the Open Range Record, there's an article that we titled, "They Say They're Wyoming Conservatives. Here's What That Really Means." And this all started because of campaign advertisements from gubernatorial candidate and now Senator Eric Barlow. Now, if you remember, when he gave his announcement speech, Eric Barlow swore up and down that he's a conservative. Right. Over his entire legislative career, Eric Barlow votes with the Democrats 85% of the time. My friends, if you are 85% of anything, you're probably that thing. If it walks like a donkey and talks like a donkey and votes like a jackass, it's a Democrat. It's not a Republican. So anyway, in this piece, and this is by one of our columnists at the Open Range Record, his name is B. Alfred Marshall. And or at least that's his pen name. There's a lot of people that they're good writers, and they don't, they've got their own personal interests, and, maybe they don't want their name out there, and I'm okay with that. Lots of writers use pen names. But anyway, let me just read you the opening paragraphs of this. And I quote, "In a couple of months, every mailbox in Wyoming will be filled to the brim with copious amounts of political mailers. You know it. I know it. That time is coming, my friends." By the way, did you know that the amount of time that to go from the mailbox to the trash can. 15 seconds, whatever. Anyway, most of them will be emblazoned with the word conservative. True, tough, strong, staunch, constitutional conservative. The variations are almost endless. Some, like gubernatorial candidate Eric Barlow, will forego the classic Wyoming conservative. Now, no matter the size of the letters on the card, there's usually no definition of what that phrase actually means. Almost certainly, being a Wyoming conservative means something different to the owner of the mailbox than is intended by the candidate. And just think about this, right? How many times have you talked to a candidate, or they've shown up on your doorstep and they say things like, I love my guns, abortion is wrong, taxes are too high, I'm a conservative and you should vote for me. How many times have you heard a pitch like that? Well, most of the time, if you're in Wyoming. And then what they do is they go to Cheyenne and they vote exactly the opposite. And so what this piece from Marshall attempts to do is show you the statistics of where these Wyoming conservatives, the people that have been in charge of our state for at least the last 40 years, what they've actually given us. So let me just run through a couple of them. And he gives you where all this stuff came from. So he says, if they're indeed Wyoming conservatives, one need only look at the data from the Wyoming Department of Audit, Department of Revenue, Economic Analysis Division, Department of Workforce Services, Department of Education, the University of Wyoming, and the United States Census. And so here's what he found. Median household income, and this is from 2019 to 2025. So, a span of roughly 6 years-ish. So median household income in Wyoming is 8% below the U.S. average. if these politicians in Wyoming are doing such a great job, and if the Wyoming Business Council is cranking up the economy like Josh Durrell says, then why is the median income 8% lower than everybody else? Good question. Real GDP is 10.3% behind the United States average. And so GDP in Wyoming is 3.1%. The national average is 13.4%. 73% increase in residential property taxes. Now that's through 2024 because we don't really have the data any further than that. But that's before the Freedom Caucus and the conservatives took over the House, and they started reducing residential property taxes in 2025. There's been a 30% increase in state taxes, sales taxes. There's been a 64% increase in state of Wyoming revenues. 64%. More money than they took in 2018. So let me ask you this. Has your income increased 64%? No, it hasn't. I can pretty much say that with absolute certainty, unless you've had some sort of windfall or something, but it hasn't got up that much. And here's the one that really ticks me off. $13.8 billion in excess revenue was collected from Wyoming taxpayers. So the state of Wyoming from 2019 to 2025 brought in $105.1 billion. You know how much they needed to run the state during that time with their expenditures? $91.3 billion. So they overtaxed you $13.8 billion. Now, when you look at state and local cash reserves, because a lot of this story doesn't get told, that a big chunk of your money is sitting in reserve accounts at the county and municipal levels, and board levels too. There's one county in particular, Johnson County. Last I looked, they had about $75 million of your money stashed away. And here just one more. I'm going to have to tell you about education too. The state of Wyoming is spending $4 billion more per year in 2025 than in 2019. $4 billion more than they were just a few short years ago. Now, in K-12 education, and I think this is where the rubber really meets the road on this, 42% of Wyoming's 315 schools either do not meet or only partially meet expectations. 40+% of Wyoming's 88,690 students are either at basic or below achievement levels in 3 through 10 test scores. Less than 60% are proficient or advanced. And so not only is this an economic problem, this is also a problem with teaching our kids that we're not teaching them. And I mean, these numbers, you can't deny it. Go back to the interview I did with Megan Degenfelder, the current superintendent of public instruction. I straight up hit her with these statistics, and there wasn't really an answer. The truth is, my friends, that we're spending a crap load of money, and we're not getting a good return on our investment. Now, let me tell you about who has been doing that. And this is where we get into evidence-based Wyoming. So if you go to evidencebasedwyoming.com /rankings, that'll give you the rank on all. And let me just show you this to you here. See if I can. Here we go. All right, so check this out. So this is all of the rankings from Evidence-Based Wyoming. And what he does is he ranks them from very conservative to extraordinarily liberal. So at the top of the list is Gary Brown. Gary is the most, according to Evidence-Based Wyoming, he's the most conservative person in the House of Representatives. Then we go down the list. Agent 29, he's number 9. And if you look over here, I guess I should tell you this too, if I can do this. Let's see here. If you go over to the side, it tells you score. And what that is that's how often they vote with the Republicans. That's what that means. So Gary Brown, he votes with the Republicans 100% of the time. Now, if you scroll down, and this is where things start to get a little bit, actually, we're not quite down there. So in the conservative ranking, we're still talking about people that vote with the Republicans 96.5%. So, I mean, that's pretty darn close. What that tells you is there was a bill or two that they didn't really side, with the rest of their pals. But here's the important part. When you get down to the quote unquote moderates. And I would argue that, and I think I've told you this for a really long time, that really there are no moderates in the Wyoming legislature. There's either conservatives and then people that are very liberal. And here are the numbers that prove it. So if you look down here at where it says J.R. Riggins. Now, J.R. Riggins votes with the Republican majority 68.7% of the time. So, I mean, he's still voting with them more than he does with the Democrats. But when you go to that's number 36. When you go to number 37 with Governor, Rob Geringer, the reason I call him Governor Geringer is every time he gets up at the microphone, it sounds like he's giving a speech, like he's running for governor. I mean, his dad was the governor of Wyoming, so maybe that makes sense. But anyway, so the scores go from around 70% and they drop all the way to 42.9%. So what that tells you is that 60% of the time he's voting with the Democrats. So really, there are no moderates in this whole list. Now, when you display the data, to make it understandable, you've got to break it up somehow, which is what Doug Gerard does with his site. But you can see that we go from 70% voting with the Democrats, and it drops to 40%. So there are no people in the middle here. You're either voting with the Republicans or you're voting with the Democrats. And so when you get down to number 40, now keep in mind that there are 62 people in the House. So at number 40, we drop from 35%, that's Art Washut, the guy that's in charge of the super special investigative committee. He only votes with the Republicans 35% of the time. And, I'm sure that he tells all of his constituents that, oh, no, I'm super conservative. Yeah, I mean, I like all this conservative stuff. Poppycock. All right, so it goes from Art Washut to the new guy, Justin Fornstrom. He only votes with the Republicans 15% of the time. And it just goes downhill from there. And you look, down here on the bottom, like Ken Chestic, Bob Nicholas, here's a good one. He's less conservative than Mike Yin. Mike Yin votes with the Republicans at least 6% of the time. Bob Nicholas, only 2%. So what I'm telling you, my friends, is you have to look at these tools to find out who exactly is it is that's asking for your vote. And Evidence-Based Wyoming is a really good tool because it gives you, it just gives you actual data. How often they vote with the Republicans versus how often they vote with the Democrats. Now, there's a lot of conclusions that you can draw from all those numbers that I just showed you. But that's the data. Now, redcoats, rhinos, the reason I call them redcoats is they masquerade as Republicans, but really when they get home, they take off that Republican coat and they just reveal themselves for who they really are, Democrats. And a lot of these people, in any other state, in any other place, they would be actual Democrats. But it's just because here in Wyoming, if they do register as a Democrat, they're not getting elected. All right, so that's the scores. Now we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the bills. So back in a minute. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, number 41 on the top 100 podcasts in the entire United States of America. You know, it's funny. I read an email yesterday that was sent to one of the legislators, and it's this guy that claims that he's got the most listened to podcast in Wyoming. Funny thing is, you go to his podcast, and he's never interviewed anybody from Wyoming, and there's no indication whatsoever that anybody in Wyoming even has heard of this guy. You know, it's funny. You can make all sorts of claims that you want, but it's another thing entirely when you've got the data to prove it. Cowboy State Politics is the most listened to conservative podcast in Wyoming, number 41 on the top 100. All right, my friends, back to the program. And if you're just joining us, we started out the program telling you how the members of the Senate, man, they have spent their bank account into the negative. Now, of course, that needs a couple caveats with it. So the legislature is still going on, right? And they're still debating the budget bill, and we can't deficit spend. I mean, that's impossible. And so where this is at right now is those two budget bills are going to go to conference committee, and they're going to have to iron all this stuff out, which means, you know, they're either going to have to kill a bill or two, or they're going to have to give some stuff up in the budget. But as it sits right now, the goldenrod, that is the legislative equivalent of your online bank account, shows that the Senate, yeah, financially speaking, they're incompetent. And it's on paper. And it's pretty bad when your own staff is calling you incompetent. And again, I'll put that picture up on the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, when I get done with the program today. A couple of comments from some of the listeners. It's absolutely Joseph Kibler says, "Hey Joseph, thanks for watching the show. $4 billion more than what was needed." That's right. You know, go check out that article on the Open Range Record. That here's what a Wyoming conservative. Here's what that term means. And another one, like, Democrats are crooks. Good morning, Jerry. Good morning, my beautiful wife. Thank you for watching the program. And Chris, the lovely Christine says she has a Gail Simmons screenshot that she's going to post after the show. Oh, and by the way, Gail, if you're watching the program, I have a great article coming for you. You know, and I've been sitting on this one for a while, and I just can't resist. You know, Gail is one of those people that she testifies before just about every committee. She really doesn't know. I mean, she thinks that she's an expert on just about everything. But here's the thing. Like, she has this habit of not telling the committee the whole story, and she's known to do that. If you talk to, you know, any number of Wyoming legislators, they'll tell you that, yeah, Gail really doesn't tell you the whole story, and she only tells you what fits her own narrative, which is to trash conservatives. And Gail is another one of those that swears up and down that she's a conservative. But if you look at her social media, which she's pretty prolific on social media, yeah, none of her positions are actually conservative. But Gail, I've got a piece coming. I know you're absolutely going to love it. And way more importantly than your opinion, Gail Simmons, The Master Chief is going to love it too. So anyway, that's coming. So now I think that we would be remiss if we didn't talk about what some of the bills that are up this morning. And there's not a lot of them, to be honest with you. There's a list in the House on second reading. And the way this works, let me just explain this. So a bill goes through what they call committee of the whole, and they debate it, they go back and forth, and it passes committee of the whole. It goes to second reading. Now, if there are no amendments to the bill on second reading, that's just a procedural thing, and they just say, okay, it's going through to third reading. And then if there are no amendments on third reading, then they just smack the gavel down and it passes the House, or not, because then at third reading they hold a vote on the entire bill, and if it passes with no amendments, it just goes on. But there are some bills that, and let me just give you kind of the Cliff Notes version of what's on second reading. There's hospital bankruptcy proceedings, theft amendments. This one's interesting. They called it absconding. Absconding. Well, now wait a minute. The definition of the word absconding, it means that you take something and you take it away. So by definition, it's criminal. And so really, what the bill's title is, what they talked about on the floor was, we could translate it as criminal theft. I'm telling you, man, some of these redcoats, they have no idea what they're doing. And this one was Art Wash It. Yeah, Mr. 15% voting with the Republicans. All right. So anyway, let's see here. Subleasing of state lands. This was an interesting discussion yesterday on the floor of the House. What the bill would do is allow you to sublet a state lease. So if you had leased property to, graze your cattle on, you could sublet part of that state lease to somebody else. Now, right now, you can't do that, right? You either have the whole thing or not, and you can't lease it out to somebody else. But that makes sense to me, man. If you lease something, that's pretty much yours. And if there's a part of your lease that says you can sublet, your part of your house or whatever, I mean, I see no reason why we shouldn't do that. Lottery tickets, acceptance of debit card payments. Now, this one I understand in principle, right? It's you go in to buy a lottery ticket, you got to pay it in cash. You can't use a debit card. But I'm actually kind of against this one because gambling is one of those things that it destroys families. I think that it's absolutely I think that it's absolutely a destructive force. And it's one that's increasing in Wyoming. I mean, in Sheridan, for a while there have been like two horse racing parlors. Really they have some horse racing, but the rest of the place is filled with what they call skill games. They're slot machines. Let's just be honest, what they are. Well, there was another one that popped up, and it's straight on the sign. It doesn't say horse racing. It says Lucky Sevens. I mean, a straight up casino. And I'm just not in favor of expanding gambling in the state anymore. And in fact, I think that we've gone too far. I don't want Wyoming to turn into, South Dakota, but, okay, so you might say, here's a great discussion. Okay. I'm a free market capitalist. I think the government should stay out of private business. And that's why I'm opposed to the Wyoming Business Council. By the way, there's a great op-ed or letter to the editor about the Wyoming Business Council on the Open Range Record. You should go check it out. The lovely Christine wrote it, so go read it and give her some kudos for it because it's really good. But anyway, it's the Wyoming Business Council, the state, they just need to stay out of private business. Let businesses operate, rise and fall on their own. Our country was never set up for the government to be monkeying around with private business. Now, that being said, as conservatives, and this is actually in the Wyoming Constitution, this little guy right here, it's Article 7, Section 20, and it literally says that the legislature has a duty to protect I think it says more, let me look it up. I'll just read it to you. That way I'm just not guessing. And let's see, Article, hold on. Man, weird. There's pages that just open on their own. Article 7, Section 20. Here it is. This one's a strange one. Most people don't know this is in the Constitution. Here it is. The duty of the legislature to protect health and morality of the people. As the health and morality of the people are essential to their well-being and to the peace and permanence of the state, it shall be the duty of the legislature to protect and promote these vital interests by such measures for the encouragement of temperance and virtue, and such restrictions upon vice and immorality of every sort as are deemed necessary for the public welfare. And so it's the duty of the legislature to regulate these things. And nobody can claim that gambling addiction isn't a thing. It absolutely is. And if you're the person that's where you want to spend your money, go ahead. But I don't think that the state should be increasing that. Now you might make the argument, well, what about alcohol? We've got lots of laws as it relates to alcohol. We've got lots of laws as it relates to a whole bunch of different things. There's no reason why we can't put some guardrails around this gambling issue. I find it to be really destructive. Let's see here. Elections, voting machine, and voting system tests. Elections, voter registration revisions. There's a Mortgage Modification Act and the increase of Hathaway Scholarship Awards. Now, this one was a pretty interesting discussion, too, because part of it revolved around when students would get their Hathaway Scholarship and if they would get it all in one lump sum, which I'm absolutely opposed to, by the way. I think that it should be given out. Scholarships should be given out per semester. And here's the reason why. If you give a big giant chunk of money to somebody for their scholarship, they may just say, thanks for the cash. I don't think I want to go to school now. And then you're stuck with it. So those are the bills on second reading. And the only one that has amendments on it is Senate File 18, and that's attendance of students in K-12 schools. Then there's a third reading consent list. The heartbeat bill is on that one. And that's a really important piece of legislation. That if a baby, and I am absolutely opposed to any type of abortion. It's murder. It's wrong. There's so many reasons around that. But this bill says that if a young baby has a heartbeat, you can't kill it. Now, you should be able to kill it anyway. But this particular bill says if a baby has a heartbeat, then abortion is out. So a restriction. And I think in Article 1, Section 38, it absolutely says that the legislature can enact restrictions on those. And then the Wyoming First Amendment Protection Act, this is a super, super important bill. That one is up on third reading. Now, what this is an anti-SLAPP bill. SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuits Against Public Participation. And so what happens is members of the public, maybe they start posting on Facebook about some government thing that they've, something the business is doing, and they start exposing it. Well, what a lot of companies will do is they'll just file a lawsuit. Not that they're going to win, but it's the process is the punishment. And so these frivolous lawsuits get filed, and even though it's not true, and even though in the end you would win this lawsuit, you still have to hire an attorney. It's still going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars, and it's still going to bankrupt you. And so this anti-SLAPP law prevents those types of lawsuits. And this is really important for, private citizens, but it's also important for the press, that we have to be able to, the press has to be able to publish freely without government restrictions. That's the only way that corruption gets exposed. And if you're writing a story on, I don't know, maybe how the Wyoming Business Council and Josh Durrell are trying to, destroy Wyoming's economy and turn us into a socialist commune, you shouldn't be at risk of a lawsuit. Or this big affordable housing boondoggle that my pal Rebecca has uncovered. That's a big one there. It's all private companies that are making millions and millions of dollars off of you, but they're private companies. So this bill would prevent them from filing a lawsuit to shut you up. And that's what a SLAPP lawsuit is. It's a frivolous lawsuit to just shut you up. And the punishment is the process on that one. So it's a big First Amendment bill, and it's amazing how many, and Martha Lawley, oh man, she tried her darndest to destroy that bill yesterday. And what she tried to do was put a blanket exception in there for defamation. All right, so what a lot of these companies do that file SLAPP lawsuits is they claim defamation. when a media outlet or a private person exposes what they're doing. Hey, this person, they're doing some nefarious thing over here. Well, then the other party will claim that that's defamation. And so Martha Lawley's amendment would have added that to the bill, essentially gutting the entire thing. I mean, there would be no reason to pass the bill if that was an exception, because we've already got standards for what defamation is. And essentially, that's saying something about someone that's not true, saying or writing something about someone that's not true. You got to be able to, and I'm one of those people, you back up what you say. And so, if you don't have proof that somebody is engaged in wrongdoing, then you probably shouldn't write that, right? Make sure that you bring the receipts, show your work, show your sources. So that's a tremendously important piece of legislation. Now, there's a number of bills that are also on general file that have not gone through committee of the whole yet. Let's see here. Medicaid rate increase for EMS. Yeah, that one's probably not going to go through the House. Fentanyl to minors, enhanced penalty. Okay. Contracts for holding and treating mentally ill detainees. Literacy position for a K-3 reading program. Keeping amateurism in high school activities. This one, I don't really like Senator Crum. I think he's straight up a redcoat. His voting shows that. Yeah, I think that this is important. We're turning college athletics, and there's probably going to be a push for high school athletics to be involved in this name, image, and likeness thing. And so this bill would try to get a handle on that. So that's what's happening in the House. Let me tell you what's going to happen in the Senate here. Let's see your details. Here we go. So on second reading, and again, this is just a procedural thing here. Birthing centers, Medicaid coverage, oil and gas bonding, and let's see your third reading consent list. There's a whole bunch of them on there. One of those is Convention of States. Oh boy. Coming very soon, my friends, is, and I wish I didn't have to do this every session, but every session they file this stupid bill, and I end up having to do another episode as to why Convention of States is an absolutely insane idea. How it's a perfect, if you want to destroy the country, that's an easy way to do it. Open the Constitution up for any sort of amendments. That's just terrible. So that episode is coming too, but it's on third reading in the Senate. Let's see here. Things that they have amendments on: prescriptive easements for electricity, residential property tax revisions, Wyoming Business Council amendments. That one is to refund the Business Council. That's what that one is. And then bills they've got on general file: firefighters retirement plans, long-term homeowner exception, post-election audit procedures, K-12 facilities, local government distributions, and federal mineral royalties. And so really, in both the House and the Senate, there's not a lot that's going on today. We're kind of winding down, and they killed a whole bunch of bills. So there's not really that much to talk about. But in my mind, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The reason why the Wyoming Constitution sets up a budget session and enacts that 2/3 rule is, you're really supposed to be talking about the budget. That's why you got half the time. That's why it's harder to get other legislation passed. And it is not necessarily a bad thing that all of these other bills died, because I guess the way that I would put it is that sometimes, my friends, gridlock is good. Your liberties are never so imperiled than when the legislature is in session. Just about every year, there's 600 different laws that are passed, and not a one of them is usually, with the exception of gun bills, not one of them usually expands your freedom. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing that a bunch of these laws died. Now, I'm sure for conservatives, there was a lot of election integrity stuff that we wanted. We do have problems in our elections, but, like I say, it's not really a bad thing that most of the attention this session, well, it should have been on the budget, where most of the attention was placed, however, is on this stupid check thing. But like I said, gridlock is good sometimes, my friends, and it's better that the legislature doesn't do anything than to them, try to take your liberties away. All right, so let's go ahead and take our last break, and when we come back, we'll finish up the program. Lots to talk about, lots going on in the legislature, and so we'll be back in about a couple minutes. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. Thank you for sticking with me through the whole hour. This is Cowboy State Politics live on a Tuesday. I'm ecstatic that you've come along with me for the ride. And, you know, even though we've only got the rest of this week and then maybe one more week of the legislative session, you know, this whole thing seems like it's just flown by. And, you know, every year that I'm down here, just the whole thing becomes a blur. It's really hard to figure out like where you're at. But, my friends, there's a lot more stories to write and to talk about, and we're going to do more of that tomorrow. Like I said, we've got the Convention of States bill. I need to do an episode on that. There's still a lot of conservatives that think that that's a good idea, and their favorite argument is, "Oh, we have to do something." Really? No, we don't. And just because you have to do something doesn't mean that putting the Constitution up for debate is that thing. It's absolutely an idiotic idea. And I'll do an in-depth episode explaining the whole thing over again. This is like a tradition on Cowboy State Politics. Here's how dumb all the people that put this thing forward every year are. And, you know, I don't mean the supporters. I mean the legislators. They know better. But, you know, the idea of a convention of states it's seductive because the people that push it, they tell you, oh, this is going to fix everything. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. When in reality, it's not. It's a seductive idea because, you know, people are worried about the country. And when you're told, you know, this is the way to fix it, well, you know, why wouldn't you go along with that? But it's an absolutely wrong-headed idea, and I'll explain it, you know, in an episode. It's going to take me a little bit to put everything together, but I promise you But by the way, one of my favorite episodes was publishing the debate between me and Dennis Beitman about the Convention of States. You know, he didn't expect what I was going to hit him with, and he got absolutely throttled in that debate. I may just replay that one just for the fun of it. Anyway, my friends, that'll do it for today's installment of the broadcast. Don't miss everything that's coming on the Open Range Record, and we'll see you tomorrow. Don't miss tonight's edition of the Roundup. We're going to have that one tonight. And I don't know who the guest is going to be yet, but I'll have somebody to sit in on the program with us. So for now, my friends, from the depths of the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.